Witnessing your emotions has the power to change your life. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine one guy, he goes up to a girl, gives her a compliment, and she reacts poorly and gives him attitude and goes like, "Ugh, thank you, I guess." That guy, let's call him Jack. Jack talks to the girl, she reacts bad, and he immediately shuts down. He feels terrible about himself. He stops socializing completely and just goes home. Now let's imagine Bob. Same situation, same action. Bob goes up to the girl. She reacts poorly, gives him attitude, goes like, "Oh, thank you," and walks away. Doesn't even look at him. Bob's reaction is, "Oh, she seems like she's having a bad day. I hope everything's good in her life." Bob goes on to open up another conversation with somebody right by the bar, and they hit it off. They keep talking for the rest of the night. They become really good friends, and possibly even gets into a relationship. That's how it happens. It's always sudden and out of nowhere and unexpected. But the question is, what is the difference between Jack and Bob? Jack shut down, went home, stopped pursuing his opportunities, stopped socializing, stopped giving his personality to the people around him and sharing that with them. Bob was unaffected. Bob continued socializing, continued talking, and ended up having one of the best nights of his life, coincidentally. This is what I'm going to break down in this video, and I'm going to explain how witnessing your emotions can lead you to an abundant life. Before we get into it, we got to get one thing out of the way. You can't become like Bob just by having positive affirmations and telling yourself you're so awesome every day. You can't become like him by just hyping yourself up and listening to really and just listening to really hyped up music. The reason Bob reacted to that situation the way that he did was because Bob was operating from a different set of beliefs than Jack was. Bob had a different perspective on the world. Bob had a different narrative running through his mind. And more importantly, Bob had a different interpretation of real world situations. This is where we start digging into it. First, you have something that happens, right? You see that happen, you experience that happening, and you give it a certain meaning. The meaning that you give it is going to be based on the values and beliefs that you have instilled in you. And then depending on what meaning you gave it, you are going to decide to take a certain action because of it. And then this loop stemming from values to beliefs to that meaning that you're giving situations to the actions that you take based on that meaning, this loop just cycles through for the rest of your life until you interrupt the loop and you change it at its core. Now, values are something that have been given to you, something that you've learned early on. These are things that you at some point decided matters, usually without knowing it. And a lot of these things are deep rooted human needs. They're not just things that you figured out. These are actual human conditions. And so values are the deepest level of identity. Things like valuing a sense of belonging, valuing significance, valuing respect, valuing safety. These are all values. And that's a whole video of its own in terms of identifying what your values are. But to put it simply, if you want to dig into what your values are, look at where your attention goes throughout the day. Look at where your desires flow. Do you really enjoy traveling, for example, and you make an effort to travel? Then that's a value for you. You value traveling and seeing the world. Do you value material wealth? Do you value nice cars? Do you find yourself looking at sports cars? Do you find yourself looking at supercars and sports cars and dreaming about owning one day? These are values. Now, from values, we move into beliefs. You might value a supercar, but you might value a supercar, but what do you believe about it? Do you believe that you have the potential to own one? Now, this is a surface level example, but something like self-worth, respect, that's a value. Do you believe that you are worthy of respect? Now we're getting to the root of things. A lot of guys, and this is very common, we base our self-worth on the outside world, on what the world tells us. And to some extent, that might be true, but on a spiritual level, we're all equal beings. And so there becomes this conflict between our innate sense of self-worth and what the world tells us. And where these two worlds meet is where the transformation happens. Because if you have this unshaken confidence in yourself, where you're unaffected by the world and you believe in your potential, and somebody comes and tells you that you're a terrible person, this is where you have a decision to make. You can either listen to them and believe what they're saying, or you can listen to yourself and believe what you're saying. I'll put it more simply. If you have some sort of insecurity inside yourself where you believe that you're not enough to whatever extent, and somebody touches on that insecurity, the only reason you will be affected by what they say is because you have that insecurity in you. You already believe what they're saying to some extent, whether you know it or not. Now, if somebody walks up to you, for example, and says, your blue hair is ugly and you're bald and beautiful, do you feel bad that somebody said your blue hair is ugly? Or do you feel that that was such a weird and random comment to make? Because you know at 100% certainty that you don't have blue hair. And so the level of offense that you take to the world giving you a certain piece of data is based on the level of insecurity you have towards that piece of data. Because at the end of the day, that's all it is data. It's all it is feedback. It's nothing else. You are the one that gives it meaning. You are the one that gives it judgment. If you judge it as good or bad, you are going to follow through based on that judgment. So now we're moving into the next step of this. Based on your beliefs, you are filtering what you're seeing and hearing that the world is telling you. And this becomes your perspective. Now, the perspective is basically the interpretation that you give it. I want you to understand that you are at all times in control of the meaning that you assign to situations. But for the sake of sticking to the chain, let me move forward and explain where this goes. Once you interpret a situation and you have this perspective on it, now you start telling yourself a story. You start explaining that perspective to yourself. You start finding reasons. You start finding evidence. And that evidence reinforces that perspective, and this becomes your self-talk, the narrative that you operate under. It's that voice in your head that's telling you what's right, what's wrong, and who you are and who you're not, what you can do, what you can't do. One of my favorite quotes of all time says, "The words you speak become the house you live in." And that's never been more true. Your self-talk leads you to take certain actions, which then create your environment or put you in an environment, and it becomes the core of your physical and mental existence. You start attracting certain people. You start joining certain things, events or organizations. And every piece of this is reinforcing the self-talk you have, the perspective you have, the belief that that comes from, and the values you have. And this becomes the result of your life. And this loop just continues. Now, the question is, how do you break out of this? Most people get emotional. Most people reach a point where they're like, I'm going to change this. I'm tired of it. I'm done. I'm turning my life around. And then they'll go work out for a month, for example. And after that month, they'll find themselves showing up less often. And then after another month, they find themselves eating more. And after another month, they find themselves back to where they started. And that sprint of 2 to 3 months was all it was. But nothing has changed ultimately for them. This is why willpower alone does not work. You can't force yourself to change your self-talk, because self-talk is not the root of it. It's the symptom. The root of it is the belief that you're operating from. This is where toxic positivity comes in and why it's a problem. Because people operate on the surface level. They try to will their way to a result. They wake up every day, repeat their 20 affirmations, look themselves in the mirror, good pep talk, turn on that motivational YouTube video, go journal their gratitude lists, and then wonder why nothing is working. It's not the affirmations, it's not the video, it's not the gratitude list that's the problem. It's where they're coming from. You can't positive think your way out of a belief that says you're not enough. So I'm going to explain how to break out of this loop. We're going to break it down into 3 steps. As a recap, we went over your identity being based around these concepts of values leading to beliefs, leading to perspective, leading to your story and narrative, leading to the actions that you take, leading to the outcomes that you experience, leading to going back to the beliefs that you have. And so the way I see values is that values kind of set the stage. They're the basis. They're the very basic components of your identity. They're basically what you agree on to be true, and then everything else builds from there. So if you take the idea of respect, you value that idea. That is the foundation. You value respect. And the rest takes off based on the beliefs you form around that. So, for example, if respect is your value, you go up to a woman, you approach her, and she treats you poorly, she disrespects you. You start to believe, when I approach, I get disrespected. Because I value respect, I don't want to approach. Approaching is a bad thing. That's the belief that you start to operate from. Approaching is bad because I get disrespected. Then you might try to push through it. You might try to will your way through it, like we talked about just now. And you approach somebody and talk to them, and they're not really receptive. Maybe they're having a bad day. And then you tell yourself, I knew it. Approaching is bad. I got disrespected again. Because that's what you're looking for. That's the reinforcement and evidence that you need to build your belief more and more. So when we break this down, we're starting from the belief. And the first step to take in breaking this down is first to be aware of it and let it happen. Sounds a little contradictory, I know, but if you do not give it space to exist, if you do not become aware of what is happening, you can't change anything because you're not aware of it. It runs your life. There's another really good saying, and I actually have this one on my board. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. So the first thing you have to do is build awareness. Now, how do you build awareness around it, you might ask? Well, there's really three ways to do that. You can either track down your behaviors, you can track down your feelings, or you can track down your thoughts. Whichever one you become aware of first can lead you to the other two. These aren't necessarily in any order. They kind of go back and forth. They kind of feed into each other. So if you're sitting there and you notice you're kind of clamped up, your body language is like this. Let's say you're reading something and you're like really clamped up. You're starting to feel small. And then all of a sudden you realize like, wait a minute, I'm slouching. I'm like, my shoulders are down. My body is compressing. So that's a behavior that you just became aware of. And as you become aware of that, you can start to think to yourself, where is this behavior coming from? What did I feel from that behavior? Or what did I feel that made me have that behavior? As I said, they kind of feed into each other. So one causes the other and they go back and forth. And then what are the thoughts I'm having as a result of this? Or even the other way around. You watch something negative online and you start feeling fear and guilt out of nowhere. And you start noticing your body is slouching. It's because it was feeding into your thoughts. You were having these negative thoughts and it was creating negative emotions, and that was creating negative behavior. So behavior, emotions, and thoughts, they all kind of feed into each other. And that first step is tracking where it's coming from. Whichever one you become aware of first will lead you to the others. Once you track down those three things, now it's time to go deeper and track down the belief that these things are coming from. So if you notice a behavior where a girl reacts badly to your compliment and you shut down, you don't talk to anyone anymore, you sit down, you kind of slouch over, or you just go home. You start feeling a little sad and discouraged. And then you start thinking thoughts like, did I look weird? Did I say something wrong? So you track down all three things. Now we can think about where this is coming from. And it's pretty safe to say that this is stemming from a belief that you're not enough. You're not worth her time. You have nothing to give. You have no value to add. This is the underlying belief. And the way you can find that is asking yourself, what would have to be true for this thought to make sense? Now that you're aware of what's happening, the next step is not fighting it. The next step is allowing it. I'm going to summarize step number 2 in one sentence. You feel an emotion, you do not live in it. As in, you can feel something, but it's not who you are. Or even think something, but it's not who you are. Who you are is the space where all of this takes place. That space is where change becomes possible, as long as you view all of this happening from a compassionate third-person perspective, without attachment, without shame, without guilt. Because once you start judging these negative emotions and things coming up and patterns that you keep repeating, whether they're good or bad, your judgment of it puts you back into step 1 of being a victim to your emotions and having to build awareness around it and detach from them. So if you've built any level of awareness around these emotions and thoughts and behaviors, the next step is detachment. You have to allow space for these things to exist and you have to approach it with compassion. Now, having found out what these emotions are and thoughts and behaviors in step one and built a level of awareness around it, and then built a bit of a gap between impulse and action in step two by making room for these emotions and allowing them to happen compassionately. Now we're at step three. What do we do next? How do we actually get out of this? How do we take action and make the change? And the answer to that is curiosity. You don't just say, I'm going to go on a diet now and lose 50 pounds because I'm tired of this and that's it. That in itself is an emotional decision. You're back to square one, acting out of impulse. Even if what you're doing might be beneficial, it's not sustainable. And so the way curiosity comes in, as opposed to criticism, the way curiosity comes in is, what's the next step from here? How can I take one step forward towards the goal that I know that I have? What would I have to believe about myself for me to live that life that I envision? What's one small action I can take to reinforce this new belief? Curiosity has this explorer's energy. There's no judgment whatsoever attached to it. Just honest questions, genuine curiosity. If it's not genuine, it's not going to work. So as these things come to you, you start thinking of one small action you can take. You start thinking of another one after that, and you actually go and do it. You reinforce the new belief and you change the story that you're telling yourself. I am the guy who shows up to the gym, stays consistent. I am the guy who is social with everybody. I am the guy who adds value to any social situation. People love me. I am the guy who the world is nice to, everybody is nice to. People enjoy his presence. And the more real world results you get, the more you reinforce it and it starts turning into a positive cycle. So everything starts from values. Values is the foundation, but beliefs is where you make the change. Beliefs shape your perspective. Your perspective shapes the story that you're telling yourself. Your story shapes your self-talk and how you treat yourself. And your self-talk shapes the actions that you take. And as you take actions, you get real world outcomes, and you use those outcomes to reinforce whatever belief all of this has been coming from. Most men never see this pattern. Now you do. And so if you can implement this, I promise you it will change your life for the better. Track down the emotions, sit with them, witness them, allow them to exist, give them compassion, and then be curious about the next steps. And from there, reinforce the new belief that you're trying to build. Nothing outside of you has the power you haven't given it. All this is a choice. It's a choice to feel shame. It's a choice to feel guilt. It's a choice to punish yourself, because you could live the exact same life choosing to live in gratitude and joy. No one said what you should be except the voices in your head. I put together a written guide of this video so that you could reference it and read through it anytime. This and a lot more is going to be in my free school community that you're welcome to join, and I'll put the link in the bio. I love coaching this stuff, and I hope this makes a change for someone. Comment what belief you want to change.